Zaxby's Caribbean Jerk Chicken is just like a vacation in the tropics. Only without the sunburn. Or the dive-bombing seagulls. Or all of that pesky sand.
How'd it get in there?
Well, at least it tastes like the tropics. Enjoy our famous chicken tossed in a tropical blend of spicy habanero, fruity mango, and exotic island spices. The Caribbean Jerk boneless wings and the new filet sandwich meal. 2 more reasons you'll get a kick out of Zaxby's.
From Tally to Cali.
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
I wanna play that one.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? It is Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's, indescribably good. Check out your local Zaxby's. I know the Caribbean Jerk Sandwich is the current special, but everything on the menu will probably bring a smile to your face. Maybe it's new year, new you, trying to get in shape. There's a grilled chicken sandwich, and you can indulge a little bit with the Zax sauce. Maybe just don't go too overboard with dipping it in the Zax sauce. Just little sort of boop, boop, just a little bit. It's delicious. You'll like it a lot. Ira is a big fan of the grilled chicken sandwich at Zaxby's. Use the promo code WARCHANT30 for 30 free days of access to the ultimate Seminole sports source. Some recruiting news, I think, could be waiting for you over on warchant.com. Maybe a defensive back committing, maybe. I don't know. Check it out. Speaking of Ira, I should have segued immediately from the Zaxby's promo to Ira because Corey's not here today, which is, I hate doing these because it sounds like Corey's not working. Corey is working. He's also being a father. So we don't have a lot to do today, so we're going to release more of the interviews with Ira Schoffel, a.k.a. the Schoffel Sessions. Schoffel Sessions. And today will be Chris Thomsen, the deputy head coach. Ira introduced him as just the tight ends coach. Come on, Ira. The guy's a deputy head coach, man. Say the full title, man. Guy's earned it. As well as defensive backs coach Marcus Woodson. That'll be the episode today. That's all it is. I'm going to stop talking here in probably about 15, 20 seconds. And then for Wednesday, we'll have 2 more interviews. It'll be Kenny Dillingham and David Johnson. We'll come back on Thursday for a Renegade Express edition of the program. Post your questions over on the Tribal Council. That thread will probably go up sometime on Tuesday afternoon or so. So again, Wednesday, Dillingham, David Johnson, running backs coach. Thursday, Renegade Express. And right now, the Schoffel Sessions, Deputy Head Coach Chris Thomsen and Ira Schoffel, Managing Editor.
I'm here with Chris Thomsen, Florida State's new tight ends coach. Thanks for joining us, Coach. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I want to start off with, I think everybody that reads your resume and your background kind of, I think, sees that season of college baseball where you, I guess, led the country in home runs, 21 home runs. The one year you played baseball there at TCU. What was the deal there? Why was it just the one season? And had you been that successful as a baseball player in high school?
I went there on a football scholarship, so I really asked the football coach every year if I could play baseball, if I could do both, and he never would let me. He wanted me in the off-season program, developing in the weight room, and then in spring ball, spring football. So he just never really would let me. And I had some scouts in high school tell me that I should play college baseball. It's the only reason I pursued that and kept pushing it. Okay. And I guess my redshirt junior year, which was my 4th year, he agreed he said, I'll let you go out for baseball. And, his condition was if by football spring training, if you're not a starter in baseball, then you're coming back. You're not going to sit out there and waste time if you're not playing, which was a good deal. Yeah. And so, went out there and it worked out a little bit better than what I thought. I mean, it was a great experience and finished that season out and actually got drafted and left school early after my junior year. So, but that's why only the 1 year is just he just wouldn't let me play.
So when you were in high school, did you feel better in one sport or the other? Did you feel like you were ahead of either?
Growing up in Texas, football is just it's just emphasized so much, and I knew that I had baseball skill as well, just because I had people tell me that. But I was just dead set on playing football, and you grow up in Texas, you think you're going to the NFL, playing. If you're a decent high school player, And really the other factor was football offers full scholarships where baseball are partial.
Sure.
So when it comes right down to the financial piece of it, when one sport's going to pay everything and the other sport's only going to pay 30% of the cost or whatever it is, then that also makes that an easier decision. And again, I kind of assumed, which was my fault, assumed that maybe they would let me do both when I got there. And that's something you need to work out on the front end typically, or they don't cooperate, which I understand that too. Coaching football's a full-time commitment.
Yeah. And we'll move back. We'll move to football here quickly, but you had one day you had 5 home runs in one day in a doubleheader.
Yeah, in a doubleheader. Yeah, and was what was weird about it was the hit for it was a solo, a 2-run, a 3-run, a grand slam, and an inside the park. It was every variation, which was what was unique about it. But it was just a crazy day.
Yeah, I mean, what's that feel like? I mean, I'm not asking you to brag about yourself, but what kind of a day?
I mean, that's an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that day, there was a couple of those that were wind aided.
Okay.
You look back on it and there was a little bit of some factors that helped that. And we had a slope in the outfield at TCU, like a concrete slope, literally, that the ball would sometimes bounce off of and go back over the outfielder's head. And that's how I got the inside the park. Not because I'm extremely fast, but it just worked out where the center fielder did not field it well. But it was a crazy day. Really
FSU had a guy, Marshall McDougal, hit, was it 6 home runs? He had 6 home runs in a game at Maryland.
In one game?
In one game. And the thing, but the thing is, and what people would say, Maryland's it's a hitter's park. I mean, it's a small park, but there's no asterisk when you hit 6 home runs or 5 home runs.
No, there's not. And ours was a hitter's park too. Yeah. I mean, there were some factors that made that seem better than what it was. But it was still cool. It was a good day.
So then you decide, after baseball, you decide to get into coaching right away after playing minor league baseball?
Yeah, I played really 3 seasons in the A's organization and got cut. Mm-hmm. And so I had 18 hours left to finish at TCU, and so I went back and finished my degree. And in that time frame, I actually worked at a juvenile detention facility, worked a night shift while I was finishing college and stuff, and just decided I wanted to coach in that time frame. And I actually, because I left school after my junior year, I still had a year of football left, but not at the Division I level because of the rules.
The 5-year clock.
5-year clock. My clock was up, but I could still play my last year of football at the Division II level, and that's how I ended up at Abilene Christian. A guy that was coaching out there was a good friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, come play your last year of football because you have the eligibility and start your master's degree." That was kind of the trade-off, and so I played the year and then started being a graduate assistant there and got my master's degree there, and then just got into coaching there. Coached there 7 years. That was where I got my start in coaching.
You were a receiver?
I was a tight end.
Tight end?
Okay. Yeah, I played tight end at TCU, and then when I played the last year at Abilene Christian, was a tight end.
And then Abilene Christian, you coached a few different positions there? In your whole career, you've kind of bounced around to different positions.
Unique? I started out coaching the tight ends there because I played it, so it was more familiar and comfortable. And then the offensive line coach left the next year, and they just put me in that role. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had to learn on the run there. And then it ended up being offensive coordinator for a couple of years. And then when I coached high school, we actually ran the triple option in high school, so I coached really most of the back end. Mm-hmm. You had 3 backs in that system, coached those guys in the back end, and then went to Central Arkansas and coached the back on the offensive line. And then going back to Abilene Christian as a head coach, in small college, you don't have a 10-person staff like we have here, so you end up coaching sometimes wherever you're deficient on your staff. As a head coach, you end up kind of filling that role. So, sometimes you might work more with the receivers one year, sometimes more with the line one year, and so and then only coached 1 year on defense. Okay. But yeah, that's kind of why I probably off. And then when I left Abilene Christian, since then the last 8 years I've coached offensive line until this year.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of an overall feel for offensive football.
At Central Arkansas, of course, Coach Norvell was a player.
Yeah.
was he? You didn't coach him. He wasn't. You weren't his position coach, but were you aware of him? Did he stand out for any reason?
No, he did, and the biggest thing, I mean, he was a good player. He was a very productive player. In fact, he was the all-time leading receiver for a while. I think somebody might have bumped him in the last couple of years. He may be number 2, but he was a heck of a good player. But I think where we kind of developed a relationship player-coach, because I was coaching the line, he was the receivers, was at that time at Central Arkansas, if you were coaching, you had to also teach.
Okay.
So I taught a health lecture class and I taught a racquetball activity course. And I was mid-30s and I would still play racket. You know, I'd play those sports quite a bit. And teaching racquetball, there was none of this. I mean, I would beat all the students. They would challenge me and we would play and I would win. And then one day, Mike Norvell walks in and he's like, "Hey, I heard that you're the racquetball champ. I want to challenge you." And I said, "Let's go." And he was the only student I couldn't beat.
Really?
But we would have dog fights. I mean, we would compete like crazy in that small racquetball court. But I think through that, maybe we formed a little bit of a bond there, just competing hard and probably, you know, just kind of stayed in touch after my time was up at Central Arkansas.
I've heard people say, like, if you play somebody in a sport, if you play somebody in basketball or something like that, you can kind of get a feel for what kind of person they are. Could you, competing against him, could you get?
Yeah, I mean that's where, I mean, he is ultra competitive. I mean, which you don't ascend to those type of positions that he's in without being that, and so that was the biggest takeaway from playing him in racquetball. This dude he's gonna go as hard as he can to win all the time, and that's how he played. He was that way as a player. He was really kind of a little bit of an undersized receiver. And but he would, you know, it was towards the end of every season he'd be beat up pretty bad. I mean, physically, because he was willing to throw his body around and do those things. But just a super tough competitor and very smart, and just, you know, as hard as he could play to win everything he did.
And then as far as an offensive mind, could you guys tell as coaches then that he saw it at a different level than maybe another player, or?
I think I know our head coach did, Coach Comp, because. You know, I was with the Lions, so I wasn't around him quite as much, around Mike as a player in those roles. But in that offense, I know we moved him around quite a bit. And for receivers to move around different positions, they just have to learn more. And so I think Coach Cotton quickly recognized, because I know he encouraged him to get into coaching. He, in fact, hired him as a graduate assistant right out of coaching. So I'm sure he saw quickly that the guy's got a little different acumen than most players.
So then you go back to Abilene Christian as head coach at some point in your career, and had great success. I mean, if you look at the Abilene Christian history of football, I mean, your tenure kind of stands out. And they might have had one other run that was similar. What was that like being a head coach? What did you learn from that experience being a head coach at that level particularly? Yeah,
being a head coach is the hardest thing I've done, and just what I learned is, you know, every day you're solving problems. Every day you walk in, there's a different problem that is coming across your desk that you have to solve. And that could range anywhere from something with upper administration, with your school president, to anywhere in the physical plant with grounds, or how the field's being handled, and everything in between, with players, with recruiting, with alumni, with boosters. I mean, there's just so many people that you deal with. And as an assistant coach, you don't deal with all that. You deal with your players and your assistant coach, you know, the guys you're working with. That's really about what you deal with. And then also media as a head coach. I mean, we'll do a few of these as assistants, and as a head coach, you're doing something like this almost all the time. And so just dealing with people is what I think helped me the most, just to learn to deal with different types of people and solve problems. I mean, coaching is solving problems all the time.
Was it a hard decision to go back to be an assistant at the Power 5 level or
you know,
Division I level?
It wasn't, because the hard thing about small college, you just don't have a lot of resource. You don't have a large strength staff, so you end up doing the weight room on your own with your coaches. You don't have a large academic staff at all. You might not have anybody, so you end up running all the study halls. You don't have all the nutrition benefits that you get at this level. So 7 years of that, I was really, really kind of tired of that part of it, and wanted to get back at a level where there was good resource where players are taken care of well. Here they walk out of the weight room. They work really hard in the weight room, Coach Storms, but there's a full-time nutritionist to give them a shake to replenish their body of the nutrients they need from the workout. I mean, just things like that you don't get at the small college level. And there was a lot of things I loved about it, but you just can't develop players as well as you want to, and that really kind of wears on you after a while. And the scholarships at this level, you're a full scholarship player or not. At that level, there's partial scholarships, and guys are always trying to finance their education. Just it becomes a burden on everybody.
How much of a better assistant coach were you after you were a head coach?
I think a lot better. I just think before you're a head coach, a lot of times you're sitting there wondering, why is the head coach doing this? Why is he acting like this? Why is he stressed out about this? What's the big deal? And then when you sit in that chair, you quickly realize there's a lot of things, there's a lot of problems coming at you which create a lot of stress. And if you've been on that side of it, you can kind of try to maybe help that head coach before some of those things get to him and understand what he's dealing with.
I read an article where you talked about early in your career kind of being a yeller, and then as you kind of developed as a coach, kind of backed off of that a little bit. Was there a point in time that happened, or was that a gradual thing, and what went into it?
Yeah, coaching styles, man, there's so many coaching styles that work. And when I was coached in college, the guy that coached us was really all the time yelling. And so when I first got into coaching, I just naturally, I thought that was it, and so and I still know coaches that do that. I mean, the whole practice from start to finish, they are at a high level with their voice, and I respect that. I mean, there's all different kinds of styles. I've gotten a little bit more to where I'll pick my spots, and try to get their attention. Maybe a little bit less than what I used to, and in my mind that means a little bit more to them. When I approach them in that way, they know that what they're doing is going to really keep us from winning a game. So I can still get pretty animated, but it's probably a lot less than it was, say, 20 years ago.
And it's definitely, we've seen over time here, you have different coaches come and go.
Sure.
And so when there's
styles.
But it just seems like it has to be true to who you are, right?
It does, and I don't, I definitely think that is it. But I do think, I think the way you approach players is important. How you speak to them, what you say to them, I think is very important. And one of the things I like, working with Mike is Mike has always been a guy that would get on a player if he had to, but he's also gonna, if the player does something well, he's gonna be just as enthusiastic about that. And that's probably how I would describe my own personal style. I mean, if I see a guy do it right, and some coaches think, no, that the guy does it right, that's just his job. That's no reason to get excited, and there's validity to that. But we want to get excited for guys when they do it right as well.
And our dealing with players is any different than it was 20 years ago? Or?
I don't really think so. I think they all want the same thing they wanted 20 years ago, and they all want the same. They want the things we want. They want to be successful. They want to be part of something. They want to have a role in the success of the organization. And I think some of the things may distract them a little bit more, but we had things distracting us back in the day. So I don't think it's much different. I really don't.
Coach Atkins mentioned he's excited to work with you because of your experience and things he can learn from you and the interactions you guys have had so far. Have you gotten a sense for what he brings to the table?
Yeah, we've been in the meeting room the last 2 or 3 weeks, just going over the offense and just Coach Dillingham, Coach Norvell, just teaching the different components of it, and that's really fun. I mean, that's really exciting to be a part of that. And Alex is, I mean, he's super smart. I mean, that's the first thing that I noticed, that I've observed about him. The guy is just very, very, very intelligent, and not just the line play. He's got sometimes line coaches get in their box. I was guilty of that as a line coach. I'd get in that box, and that was the only thing that mattered in my mind sometimes. And he's got that, but he's also got the bigger picture really, really well. And I'm just excited to get on the field. We're to the point, we've talked about all this so much in spring ball. We all want to get on the field and see it play out. And I love watching different offensive line coaches, how they teach drills, how they say things to players, and I'm super excited about getting to watch him do all that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And then that was my last question. Looking ahead to the spring, is how much, especially the first year with the new staff, how much of the spring is teaching and installing, and how much of it is just focus on fundamentals and that type of thing?
It's both, and it's huge. I mean, when this time next year, assuming we have continuity, it will be a lot different, But this spring, the spring is almost a trial run, especially when you're a new coach. Even if a staff's been in place 4 or 5 years, if you come in as a new coach, anything that's new to you that you're teaching is almost a trial run. You get to go through all this in the spring, and then kind of reassess in the summer, and then now it all counts even more in the fall. So this will be a great spring for all of us. Some of us have worked together, but even my time with Coach Norvell, I wasn't coaching the tight ends. It's a whole different animal. There's a lot of different moving parts coaching the tight ends than when I coached the offensive line. So Kenny being at Memphis and being in the different parts of the offense, he's done a great job of he and Coach Norvell both of coming in and tying all the pieces together for us in the meeting room and making sure we're all speaking the same language. But now it's time to go out on the grass and do it. And I'm excited because what I see of the players in the offseason, I mean, those guys are working, man. They're working hard. I'm so proud of our guys. And now we get to go out on the grass and get a trial run in spring, and then we, it's showtime after that. So
awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Coach.
Appreciate it. All right, thank y'all very much.
So, Coach, the Moss Point, Pascagoula area, obviously there's a lot of great athletes coming from there. My first job in college was covering Florida, and I covered Jack Jackson and Shane Matthews, and obviously T-Buck was here, and you and Kez and all those guys. What's high school football like in that area? How important is it to that area?
Well, it's very tradition rich. It was a area that was full of talent, more so late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, and late 90s, if you will. But, here lately, man, it's been a little bit down when it comes to the overall talent. A lot of people ended up having to relocate after the hurricane, and that really impacted, my high school for sure, being Moss Point High School. But, overall, man, it's just a really good area just when it comes to football and the history of it. So right now it's a little bit down right now.
Did you play other sports coming up, or is it football pretty much?
Well, I was a football and baseball player, and my junior year in high school, I ended up just focusing on football and doing away with baseball, but, it ended up working out to its best.
What positions did you play? Were you always a DB?
Yes, sir. I was always a DB, part-time receiver as well, kick returner and punt returner, but, DB was my main position.
And then you go on to play at Ole Miss. Who were some of the either in high school or at Ole Miss, who were some of the receivers you went against that you really enjoyed competing against?
Yeah, it was many. Grant Hurd was a really good football player as well. He was there as a senior when I was a freshman. Then we went on and had Jason Armstead, who was actually from my high school as well. He was a really good all-conference receiver as well. So ended up going against some really good ones at practice and some really good ones on Saturdays as well.
Were you a trash talker?
No, sir. No, I was just more of a guy that went about his business, didn't talk a whole lot. So I wasn't a trash talker.
What about with your players? Do you let them, if they want to get involved in that, if it gets them going, or you pretty much just put the ball down and go back?
Well, I'm a firm believer at being who you are. Obviously not doing it to the point to bring attention to yourself. But whatever it is that brings out your A game, be that person without bringing attention to yourself. I'm a firm believer at this, though. Your confidence comes from your preparation, so you don't just walk out on the field and be confident. You got to be prepared for the moment, prepared for your opponent, and then be able to go out and whatever you do say, be able to back it up.
Were you? I saw you majored in political science. What interested you in that?
It was just the politics of things and just the history of everything that goes with it. I was also a criminal justice minor, so all of that included, I was just very intrigued with learning about the political side of things and also criminal justice as well.
Would that have been a career you might have been interested in if you weren't? I talked to Coach Atkins and Coach Fuller, both considered law enforcement. Was that something you ever considered?
That's a really good question. Actually, once I got done with my eligibility at Ole Miss, I was in the process of applying to be a federal prison guard inmate. And within the process, it was a lengthy process, is when I was offered the first opportunity, to coach at Millsaps, which was my first job. And fortunately, I ended up accepting that position and doing away with applying for being a federal prison guard inmate. So, it all worked itself out.
You played for Coach Cutcliffe at Ole Miss. What was he like? And he's obviously had success at Duke, more success than probably most people expected. Was he somebody that kind of influenced you into coaching, and what kind of coach was he?
Well, yeah, he definitely encouraged it. And as a player, he was that father figure. Everything he sat in my house and told my parents and my family and I, he did that. And, to this day, he's a mentor of mine, someone that when I need some advice on a high level, he's the first person I call. So just a very genuine person, very personable guy. And I'm very fortunate to have him in my life as a mentor.
And you mentioned Millsaps College. I was curious about that. I talked to Coach Johnson about it as well. David Johnson, the running backs coach for Florida State, was on that staff as well. Coming from being a player in the SEC and then going to that environment where it's no scholarships, I'm sure the budget was small. What was that like for you as a young coach?
Well, as a coach, you didn't know any better. I knew obviously playing in the SEC as a player, but from a coach's perspective, I didn't know. But it was a very humbling experience from the standpoint of you coaching kids that are not on scholarship, that are paying you to play football, and just to see the love that they had for the game was very, humbling for me and set, a standard for me and my coaching career that I appreciate to this day. And, we were fortunate to work for a guy by the name of Mike Dubose that invested a lot into not only myself but us as a staff. And he just transitioned me from being a player to a coach. And throughout that 4-year span, I can say I grew a whole lot. Coaching at a school like that, you learn that no job is too small, no job is too big. And that work ethic is something that I've carried with me throughout my career.
You guys obviously had success there, and you had, sounds like a pretty incredible staff for that level. Mike DeBose had been the head coach at Alabama, and Coach Johnson. And what was that staff? I mean, did you guys feel like that it was a special staff?
Yeah, and we knew it at the time. We had a staff full of young guys that inspired to coach at the highest of levels. And, we rolled our sleeves up and put our, steel-toe boots on every day to come to work. And the success was a reflection of the work ethic that we had. So a lot of those guys now are coaching Division I football. A couple of guys are head coaches. Aaron Pelch, that was on the staff at the time, was recently the head coach at Millsaps, and now he's the athletic director. So it was a really good staff to be a part of. I'm glad that I was, just able to be around a bunch of young coaches that aspired to coach at a high level.
What impressed you about Coach Johnson then, and kind of did you know he was a guy that is going to go places as well? Yeah,
for sure. Number one was his genuine care for the overall athletes. He really poured into the players, not only as football players, but as young men and students as well. And just his energy and work ethic from a coaching standpoint, you could see that he had a bright future at the time. And, he's a good friend of mine, obviously, and it's interesting that, we started at Millsaps together, was able to be on Coach Norvell's staff at Memphis together as well, and now this is our third stint coaching at 3 different schools together. So really good friend, really great young, man, husband, father, and just as good of a coach.
When Coach Norvell hired you at Memphis, you were out at Fresno State?
Yes, sir.
How did that come about? How did you end up on his radar?
Yeah, that's a good question. He and we had a mutual friend, and just me being able to get connected with him is a reflection of keeping a good name. that friend that we had. I hadn't spoken with him in over 5 years at least. And, you know, somewhere along the way, he and Coach Norvell had a conversation and my name came up. And, you know, Coach Norvell reached out to me and presented the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for that.
And then we talked a little bit about this on signing day, but, you know, you basically said when Coach Norvell called, you were hopping in the car and heading back over. What is it about him that made you want to work for him again?
Well, just, you know, again, man, he's a great guy to be around. You know, he's consistent with who he is. He really pours into the overall life of the student athletes, and he's a proven winner. He's a guy that goes about his business, and whatever he holds you accountable for, he's doing. And that's the thing that you appreciate with Coach Norvell. So, again, man, this was a no-brainer opportunity for two reasons. One is Mike Norvell, and two is Florida State.
When you also, when we talked before, you talked about relationships as a coach, and I was reading comments from Coach Norvell when he hired you, and he talked about relationships. Then when I talked to Coach Dillingham about you, he talked about relationships. Do you, with your former players, are you still in contact with guys you coached years ago? How do those relationships evolve over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say at least a couple of times out the week, I have a former player that reaches out to me just to, you know, keep me posted on how things are going in their life. That's something that means a lot to me. I am big on relationships and just getting to know the individual before the football player. You know, some of the most precious moments is when a former player reaches out and sends you a picture of his newborn baby or an invitation to his wedding or whatever the case may be. That means a lot to me. And anytime I coach a player, it's not just for that 4 to 5 year span. It's a lifelong journey. And it just, you know, touches my heart to be able to see him grow into the young man that God has for him to be, and knowing that, you know, hopefully somewhere along the way that I made an impact on that.
I just want to ask you a few just kind of quick questions. If you weren't coaching, what do you think you'd be doing?
I can't imagine. You know, I can't see myself doing anything other than coaching. And regardless of level, I just want to be able to pour back into the next generation of young men and women to come. And so really, to be honest, I can't see myself doing anything other than coaching.
Do you see yourself, do you have aspirations to be a head coach, or do you like being a position coach more?
Well, the main thing is being the best defensive back coach I can be for Florida State right now. And I do aspire, you know, short-term goal-wise to become a defensive coordinator and then progressing to become a head coach, you know, down the road. But right now, I just want to be the best defensive back coach I could be for Florida State.
If you're not watching football, what sports would you be watching?
Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan still. Yeah, I like to watch baseball and even basketball as well, more so once they get into the playoffs rather than during the regular season. You know, so for me, I'm really an all-sports fan. I just like to see guys competing and having fun doing so. But if I had to put it in order, it would definitely be football, baseball, then basketball.
Without pro sports teams really in the area you grew up in, which pro sports teams did you kind of fall in favor of?
Yeah, I grew up a New Orleans Saints fan. Yeah, my parents, they would take me when I was a younger kid to go and see the New Orleans Saints. So I grew up screaming, "Who dat?" You know, the region that I'm from, that's pretty much what you have to be. That's the closest NFL team that we have. New Orleans is about an hour and a half from my hometown. So spent a lot of days coming up in New Orleans.
Who were any particular favorite athletes growing up when you were young?
Well, my dad now, different to what I just said, he was a big 49ers fan. And, you know, I grew up watching Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and Roger Craig. And being a defensive back, I was a big Ronnie Lott fan. You know, so Ronnie Lott was a you know, huge favorite player for me. But then Terrell Buckley, you know, the guy that played here at Florida State. You know, with me being from Moss Point, him being from Pascagoula, I got a chance to just watch him progress over the years. And going off into the NFL, I was a huge Terrell Buckley fan as well.
Okay, and then if it's your special occasion, you got to go out to dinner. Is it steak, seafood? What are you interested in?
I'm a big seafood guy. Yeah, I grew up, you know, naturally on the Gulf Coast, and seafood is a way of life where we grew up at, and my wife loved it as well. So whatever my wife loved, I love.
I appreciate your time, Coach. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.